Some streets got history, Bompton's got scars. Out here, the wrong handshake can turn into a shootout, and the wrong color can turn into a lifetime beef. Alliances get made, only to get broken. Rivals share the same sidewalks, but never the same air. And there's one set in the middle of it all, holding their line no matter how many enemies circle around. This isn't just about blocks and borders, it's about codes, old grudges, and a name that's been ringing since the 70s. A name that carries both respect and a target. We're talking about one crew that's had to move like it's war every day, because for them, it is. Let's dive into this story, right from the very beginning. Out in Bompton, the Treetop Pirus ain't just one block, one street, or one crew. They're a whole structure, broken down into different blocks that run deep through the neighborhood. Out here, they call it Bompton, because Bloods don't use the letter C. Everybody knows it's still Compton, but when you're repping red, you flip the name to match the flag. You got the 200 through 900 blocks, each with its own identity and homegrown members, but all riding under the same TTP flag. The 300 and 400 blocks hold it down on the east side of Arambe Avenue, while the 500s and 600s stay posted up to the west. North Hickory Street is where you'll find the 800 and 900 blocks, and that stretch has its own heavy reputation. Every block moves with its own style, but they all link back to the same cause. That's what makes them dangerous to outsiders. Decentralized, but tight-knit, moving like a unit even when spread out. The bigger story always ties back to the roots of Piru. Back in '69, Sylvester Puddin Scott and Vincent Owens weren't trying to start something flashy. They were reacting to constant pressure from the Crips, who were growing fast and aggressive. The Piru Street Boys banded together, first to protect their own, then to expand their reach. And within 3 years, their alliance with other anti-Crip gangs birthed the Bloods. That unity gave every set, TTP included, a seat at the table. By 1978, there were already 15 Blood sets in Compton alone, with names like Butler Block, Fruittown, Lime Hood, Cedar Block, and Westside Pirus locking down their turf. In 1974, a few names that still echo in the streets, JR, Big Zach, Lazy, and others, made their own mark, forming the Treetop Trojan Mad Dogs. The name alone told you they weren't playing. They carried the Piru legacy forward, building a reputation that would last for decades. The Treetops didn't just fade into the mix though. Over the years, they adapted, switched up, and kept their presence alive as Compton itself changed. Their identity wasn't just in their name, it showed in how they moved, what they wore, and the codes they lived by. One thing that never got lost was their colors, green and burgundy. Green for the leaves, tying right back to that treetop name, and burgundy coming straight from their Trojan emblem. Those colors weren't just fashion, they were a warning and a badge of loyalty. Out in Bompton, you see those colors together. You know what sets making their presence known. Like one OG put it, this ain't just a shade, homie, it's who we are. Wearing them in the wrong hood could get you pressed quick, but inside TTP turf, they were a sign you were among your own. But the colors were just the start. TTP got their own language, a code outsiders wouldn't catch unless they've been around long enough. They'll say WST to mean West Side T Trees, or drop 887 in a text or tag. On a phone keypad, 887 spells out TTP. Even the numbers mean something. This kind of talk isn't just slang, it's survival. In a world where cops are always listening and rivals are always watching, the language becomes a shield. You can be out in the open talking about business, and only those who are supposed to know will catch the meaning. The unity goes beyond slang. TTP runs on rules, ones they call the T-Trez laws. They got the Piru Oath too, a hard promise of loyalty, where crossing the set isn't just disrespect, it's a move you might not come back from. Meetings aren't optional, secrets don't get shared outside, and if you don't follow the program, the consequences are real. These aren't just street rumors, this is how the set keeps discipline, even when it's spread across multiple blocks. Inside the set, the politics are serious. There's a rank system you don't skip. Newer members are called Baby G's, the next level is Young G's, then you got the shot callers, and above them, the big go homies, the veterans who've been around long enough to know every move, every risk, every ally and enemy. Orders run downhill, respect runs uphill. That's how they keep structure, even when dealing with the chaos of street life. And in Bompton, the politics aren't just about who's got the most soldiers, it's about who's ready to hold the line when rivals push in. Those rivals are everywhere. Every move matters, because the wrong alliance or the wrong fight can shift the balance of power. That's why the younger homies get schooled quick. Learn the map, learn the history, learn who's cool and who's gunning for you. It's chess, not checkers, and the streets don't forgive bad strategy. That's the thing about the Treetops. They aren't just fighting on one front. They've been in the game long enough to have beefs inside the Piru family and outside of it. TTP moves through a minefield of enemies, and at the top of that list is their long-standing war with Fruittown Piru. Back in the early 80s, Compton streets were heating up in ways the city hadn't seen before. Piru Says were popping up all over, West Side, North Side, East Side, and they all had one thing in common: staying locked in with their allies to hold the line against the Crips, who outnumbered them heavy. Even with different neighborhoods, the Pirus had each other's backs through the decade, but by the early 90s, that unity started to crack. Little things, arguments over women, drama over dope money, turned into something bigger. Most beefs got squashed quick, but one kept growing. Treetop Piru against neighborhood Piru. The Treetops were holding down turf south of Rosecrans, running through streets named like Spruce, Cedar, and Elm. Just on the other side of Rosecrans, you had Fruittown Piru, bigger in numbers, repping streets named Peach, Pear, Cherry, and Plum. Rosecrans was just a street on the map, but in Bompton, it became a hard border. Then things shifted even more when neighborhood Piru, posted on central south of Rosecrans, linked up with Fruittown. That move locked the sides into place, and what started over hustle money became a street war nobody was backing down from. It didn't take long for blood to spill. On March 9, 1994, Pops' little brother Sal was walking the block when neighborhood Piru members rolled up. No talking, no warning. They opened fire and dropped him right there. Sal was gone, and just like that, the feud had its first body. Pops wasn't some low-level soldier. He was a name in the set, respected, feared, and connected. Losing his brother wasn't something he was letting slide. Word in the streets was that Pops made it clear someone was gonna pay for that. 9 days later, on March 18th, the payback came. That night, neighborhood Pirus were cruising down Compton Boulevard, east of Central. Out of nowhere, a big yellow car pulled up fast, cut them off hard, and stopped dead. 3 Treetop hitters jumped out and rushed the ride. The neighborhood crew bailed on foot, but the Treetops opened up on them. The driver caught it instantly, gone before he hit the ground, and another took a slug in the leg. The shooters got back in the yellow car and disappeared into the night. Later, cops hit a known Treetop hangout on Spruce Street. Inside, they found cash, cocaine, and .45 ammo. Pops, along with Noogie, Slug, and Ball, got snatched up and charged for the hit. But the war wasn't ending. It was just getting started. More than 10 years later, the heat between the sets hadn't cooled a bit. On May 27, 2006, Treetop member Carly Close stepped out for cigarettes. At the store, he ran into Harold from Fruittown. Harold's greeting came off slick, like he was pressing up. Carly wasn't having it. He fired back words, walked off, and headed home. That's when he saw Harold again, this time with 2 other Fruittown riders in a parked car. One of them, Cheeks, got out, pulled up his hood, and reached for his waist. Carly kicked off his slippers and broke into a run. Gunshots rang out. 5, maybe 6. Bullets caught him in the butt and hip. He managed to make it to a barbershop, bleeding, and told his sister it was Fruit Loops, the Treetop nickname for Fruittown. But when deputies asked, he blamed it on T-Flats, not wanting the snitch label. 4 days in the hospital later, he got bagged on unrelated gun charges and finally gave up the names: Harold, James Cox, and Michael Flores. All 3 would get convicted for attempted murder. Just 2 weeks later, the cycle spun again. June 10, 2006 was just another hot day in Bompton until it wasn't. Treetop members Deshaun, Ozzy, and Devin were at a gas station grabbing cigars. Across the street, they spotted Edward Fields from Fruittown. The walk back through the Treetop turf turned deadly when Edward pulled a semi-auto and let off 15 rounds. Ozzy dropped on the spot, gone. Deshaun went down hard, bleeding out. Devin barely made it behind a car and fired back with a revolver before taking off. At first, Deshaun didn't talk, fear of retaliation, but eventually he told police it was Edward, someone he'd known back when the 2 sets could still be in the same room without shots flying. Even with death threats coming in before court, Deshaun showed up and testified. Edward Fields got slammed with 90 years to life for murder and attempted murder. By 2012, this wasn't just some neighborhood beef, it was spilling into the public eye. That year, 2 well-known names were booked for the same concert at the LA Convention Center. On one side, you had Compton Menace from Fruittown. On the other, YG repping Treetop. The night had big names: Nipsey Hussle, Tyga, Akon. But when YG's set wrapped, Compton Menace's crew stepped in flashing signs. Words turned to shoves, shoves to punches, and in seconds, the stage became a war zone. Both entourages went at it, fists and chaos everywhere. The fight didn't stop inside, it poured out into the street, and that's when shots started ringing out. The night ended in sirens and scattered crowds, another reminder that this war wasn't buried. It was alive, loud, and ready to erupt anywhere, anytime. For the Treetop Pirus, the enemy roll call runs long, and it ain't just other blood sets or the Crips they're watching for. In Bompton, beef doesn't always stick to the same color. It can cut across race lines just as deep. The Compton T-Flats, one of the city's oldest Mexican-American sets, have gone head-to-head with plenty of black gangs over the years, and the Treetops are no exception. This isn't some passing squabble. It's part of a bigger reality in Compton, where black and Latino gangs can share the same blocks, but are split by invisible borders. And when one side crosses that border, things get violent quick. On April 16, 2009, that tension turned into action. Early in the afternoon, 3 Treetops, Taylor, Elle, and Steve, were headed to see a girl named Keisha. The route they took cut right through Elm Street and Acacia Avenue, an area where T-Flats are posted heavy. They were deep in another set zone, and in Bompton, that's always a gamble. Sure enough, a car rolled up with 3 T-Flats, Eric, Ed, and Hammer. Soon as they pulled up, they started mugging, throwing hard stares, flashing T-Flat signs, letting them know exactly whose ground they were on. Elle could feel it getting hot and told Steve they should just run. But before they could even make a move, the car's crew shouted, "T-Flats!" That's when it jumped off. Here's the twist. Later it came out that it wasn't the T-Flats who lit it up first. It was Tyler, a Treetop member. Gunshots cracked and the treetops broke in all directions. They regrouped at Keisha's house, but it didn't stop there. Tyler told Elle and Steve to go grab a gun he had stashed. They never made it. Cops pulled up and stopped them on the way. When police later spoke with Ed from the T-Flats, he didn't hold back. He told them straight. It was the treetops who fired first, claimed nobody in their car shot back. That might have been true, but in the streets, being caught slipping near enemy territory is still dangerous. Busted ride or not. Witnesses in the neighborhood backed up parts of Ed's story. They said they'd seen 3 black males tagging over T-Flats graffiti before the car pulled up. In gang culture, that's open disrespect, like stomping on someone's flag while they watch. According to them, the T-Flats just happened to roll up and catch the treetops in the act, and Tyler was the one who opened fire. When Tyler gave his side, it was a different story. He admitted to shooting, but claimed it was self-defense. He told cops that just weeks earlier, T-Flats, Hammer included, had chased him while yelling racial slurs at him and other black folks. In his mind, seeing Hammer again meant it was about to go bad. But the streets and the courtroom are 2 different worlds. Several witnesses tore down Tyler's self-defense claim. They painted him as the one pressing the action, not reacting to it. In the end, the jury believed them. The court wasn't buying his story of protection. Tyler was found guilty of manslaughter and got 10 years. For the treetops, it was another chapter in a long list of racial and territorial wars. Battles where one wrong block, one wrong move, or even one wrong look could turn the day deadly. And it was more proof that Treetop Pirus versus everybody wasn't just a figure of speech. It was the reality they were living in every day. August 18, 2024 marked a day a lot of people in Bompton never thought they'd see. After almost 20 years of bad blood, 2 of the deadliest Piru sets, Treetop Piru and Fruittown Piru, walked side by side. The move came from YG, Compton's own, and a proud treetop rep. He put together what he called the Piru Peacewalk, a chance to squash one of the most infamous street feuds in the city. The event started at Gonzalez Park, a spot with deep history for Compton. From there, the crowd began to move. Treetops, Fruittown, other Piru sets, along with regular residents, kids, and people just wanting to see a different side of the neighborhood. Cameras were out, phones were up, and social media caught every moment. YG was at the front, throwing up Piru signs, posting with other members, showing that the red side of Compton could stand together. It wasn't just about walking. Every block they covered told a story. Streets that had seen shootouts, murders, and decades of tension. Now those same corners were being crossed together. The walk ended at Tam's Burgers, a local landmark in Bompton. There they broke bread, burgers and handshakes, where there used to be bullets. Rapper The Game also showed up, adding his own voice to the message. His presence showed it wasn't just one set or one star pushing for unity. It was a bigger movement to bring some peace to Piru turf. That day proved that even long-standing wars can be paused when the right people make the call. For Treetop Piru, it was a win. Strengthening bonds with other Piru sets meant fewer enemies on the same side of the color line. But in Bompton, peace with one set doesn't mean peace with all. After making amends with Fruittown, the Treetops turned their eyes to another long-running beef, this one outside of the blood family. They reached out to Compton T-Flats, the Mexican-American set that had been one of their most consistent enemies. The move wasn't random. TTP knew that the history with T-Flats went back decades, filled with shootings, street fights, and racial tension. If they could fix things there, it would take a huge chunk of danger off the map. The approach was direct. Treetop leaders got in touch with Compton Chapo, a name in T-Flats, and invited him to meet. The goal was to talk it out, maybe even end the war once and for all. But when the offer hit Chapo, his response left no room for doubt. "We don't have no peace treaty with Pirus." No hesitation, no middle ground. For T-Flats, the line was still drawn deep, and they weren't stepping over it. That rejection didn't just mean no deal, it kept the rivalry wide open, and it didn't take long for the tension to spill out again. Soon after, a Kendrick Lamar mural in Compton got tagged with PK, Piru Killer. Kendrick isn't a gang member, but everyone knows his ties to the Piru community. He's from Compton, and his work often shows love to his people. Tagging that mural wasn't random vandalism, it was a straight shot of disrespect. In the streets, you don't need a signed confession to understand a message like like that. Plenty saw it as a move from T-Flats or someone acting for them, a reminder that their hatred for Piru's treetop included was still alive. It wasn't just about paint on a wall, it was about showing they could still hit symbols tied to Piru pride. For Treetop Pirus, it was clear. Even as they gained allies in their own family, the war with T-Flats was still locked in, and the streets weren't ready to let it go. The alliances they do have, like with Westside Pirus, are survival moves, not just friendships. Back in the day, Treetop Pirus and Westside Pirus locked it in tight. It wasn't just some handshake deal. It came from standing shoulder to shoulder when the Crips tried to push in. Both sides had their own turf, their own history, but the same enemies. Rolling together meant more soldiers, more firepower, and more respect in the streets. For years, that alliance held strong. Two Piru sets moving like one, ready to ride whenever the other called. But the Treetop's battles weren't only fought on Compton streets. From the 400 block in Bompton to prison yards across the country, the red flag still meant the same thing: Treetop Pirus. The Maryland branch of Treetop Piru started in 1999 inside the Washington County Detention Center in Hagerstown. Back then, a small crew formed up for protection against other inmates, especially those from Baltimore, and decided to carry the TTP name. From that seed, the set spread through Maryland's prison system fast, picking up members behind bars. Most of the recruiting happened inside, and before long, they had a female crew too, the Treetop Pirus, running under the same rules and colors. From the jump, this wasn't a loose crew. They were organized. Meetings were held to review shootings and fights, check on locked up members, plan robberies and hits, and handle discipline for anyone breaking the code. They even had a shared stash of guns rotating between members whenever work needed to be done. The politics and structure of Bompton's TTP were kept alive inside Maryland's walls. By 2005, Steve Willick had become one of the Maryland set's top names. Willick wasn't just another hitter, he was a shot caller. Federal court records showed that from 2005 through early 2008, even while locked up, he directed the gang's drug trade and greenlit violence. Recorded calls caught him passing orders, coordinating with members on the street, and keeping business alive. He arranged drug smuggling into prison, stayed in touch with California leadership, and made sure recruits knew the Bompton history. On those same calls, he demoted members, ordered meetings, and made it clear that sanctions, from beatings to worse, awaited anyone who crossed the line. Maryland's TTP was running full-scale operations. They carried out murders and violent hits on rivals, enforced rules internally, and made moves whenever survival or respect demanded it. They discussed intel on snitches, how to clean up after shootings, and how to keep cases from landing on their people. The feds were watching. On September 15, 2005, Kevin Gary, another major Maryland name, and other TTP members beat and killed Terrence Williams in a gang beef. Wiretaps from 2006 and 2007 caught Gary arranging guns for members and ordering beatings for rule breakers. By February 2008, he was pushing for the murder of an inmate he believed had killed his brother. Gary also tried to shut down cases. In November 2006, while locked up on murder charges, he wrote to a female TTP co-defendant, instructing her to stop two eyewitnesses from testifying. In December 2007, another call had him identifying someone he believed was cooperating with police in a TTP murder case, using paperwork slipped to him by another member. Meanwhile, Willick's leadership came to an end. On September 19, 2008, he was handed a 25-year federal sentence for running the set's racketeering conspiracy. The takedown wasn't small. 27 members were hit in the same conspiracy case. Some pled out, like Orlando Gilliard, who got over 9 years, and Shanika Penix, who got 10. ATF, Baltimore City, and County Police, and multiple correctional agencies worked the case together. This wasn't about taking one or two soldiers off the street. It was about hitting the leadership where it hurt. But the East Coast branch didn't fold. In 2009, another name stepped up, Kevin Gary. On January 9, 2009, just months after Willick's sentencing, Gary pled guilty to racketeering with TTP. The paperwork spelled out what the feds already knew. Treetop Piru came out of the Bloods in LA, born in the early 70s. The Bloods split into sets, one being the Pirus in Compton, and out of that came Treetop Piru, named after the tree-themed streets in their turf. From Bompton, the name spread, and Maryland's set had grown strong in its own right since that 1999 Hagerstown lockup. Gary's role was heavy. Between 2005 and February 2008, he moved over 50 grams of crack, a kilo or more of heroin, and large amounts of ecstasy. He wasn't just a dealer, he greenlit violence and pulled strings on the inside. His plea deal had him facing 30 years, with sentencing set for March 27, 2009. He wasn't alone. 24 more TTP members were tied to the same RICO conspiracy. Willick got got 25 years, Gilliard over 9, Phoenix 10. By the 2000s, that red flag was flying far beyond Bompton, on different blocks, in different cities, and across the country. From the 400 block in Compton to the prison yards of Maryland, Treetop Piru carried its politics, structure, and wars wherever members landed. And even across the country, it was still Treetop versus everybody. Even with the set's reach stretching coast to coast, Bompton was still home base. And back on those streets, the politics weren't just in the alleys, they were in the music. In Bompton, some names ring out on the block, others on the radio. DJ Quik was one of the few who could do both. Born David Marvin Blake on January 18, 1970, he grew up right in the heart of Treetop Piru territory, Arambi Avenue and Spruce Street, 400 block. That was West Side Compton, a stretch long held down by the treetops and always in the shadow of their war with the Compton Crips. It was the kind of environment where your street became part of your identity before you were even old enough to know what that meant. Quik didn't just live there, he breathed it. Centennial High School was where he spent his teenage years, a school close to Central Avenue, right near El Segundo Boulevard. That was an area where gang lines were sharp, and you learned quick which corners you could stand on. By 16, in 1986, Quik dropped out. Around the same time, his mother lost their home to foreclosure. She left for Louisiana, but Quik stayed behind in Compton. For 3 years, he was homeless, sleeping wherever he could, still in the middle of a city split by gang politics. While the streets could pull a young man under, Quik had something else: music. He had a gift for DJing, blending tracks, and producing beats that stood out even in the growing West Coast hip-hop scene. He started doing shows around Southern California, from small clubs to house parties. But these weren't just regular gigs. Many ended in rival gang altercations. In that world, it didn't matter if you came to spin records or just watch. If colors clashed, the night could turn violent fast. It was during these years that Quik joined the Treetop Piru. He later called it the dumbest shit, but at the time it was part of the life around him. The treetops were his people, his neighbors, the ones he'd grown up seeing on the block. Rolling with them meant loyalty, but it also meant carrying all the weight that came with the name. Every enemy, every beef, every bullet meant for the set. Even with that pull from the streets, Quik's music was building him a way out. His debut album, Quik is the Name, dropped in 1991 and took him straight to the top. The sound was pure West Coast, funk infused, smooth but sharp, a style that stood out even among legends. But no matter how high he climbed, Compton and the Treetop Piru were still in his story. He never shied away from acknowledging where he came from. In interviews, he spoke about his life with honesty, how the gang ties shaped him, how they were both a part of his rise and a shadow over it. Quik's life was always about balancing two worlds. On one side, he was a producer, an MC, respected as one of the West Coast's best. On the other, he was tied to a set that had enemies everywhere. Navigating that wasn't easy. His music wasn't just entertainment, it was storytelling. Through his lyrics, you could hear the codes, the tension, the pride, and the pain that came with living in Bompton. It was a voice for his neighborhood, a mirror for his people, and a reminder to outsiders that Compton was more than just headlines about violence. It was culture, history, and survival. The Treetop Piru connection gave Quik credibility in a city where authenticity mattered, but it also came with risks. His shows could draw both fans and rivals. The same red that symbolized loyalty to his set could spark a fight in a heartbeat. Yet, through all of it, he kept creating, turning his personal story, and by extension, the Treetop Piru story, into part of the soundtrack of the West Coast. Quik's success didn't erase his past. Even after making it big, he saw old faces reappear. Family members, people from the neighborhood, some proud of what he'd done, others trying to get close now that money was in the picture. After my success in the rap world, many of my family members popped up, he once said. It was another reminder that fame didn't protect you from the politics of the street, and for someone tied to Treetop Piru, those politics were never far away. For the Treetops, having a figure like DJ Quik wasn't just about music, it was cultural weight. He put their name into the mainstream, tied it to a sound that helped define West Coast hip-hop. Every beat, every verse was rooted in the streets that raised him, but the connection also reinforced the truth. In Bompton, even when you reach the top, you're still linked to where you came from. And for Treetop Piru, that meant you were always part of the war, whether you wanted it or not. Keenan Daquan Ray Jackson, most people know him as YG, a Grammy-nominated rapper, was born March 9, 1990 in Compton, California. He grew up right in the heart of West Spruce Street, the 400 block. In Bompton, that number means more than just an address, it's identity. It became his tag, 400, and later the name of his record label and clothing line. His stage name, Young Gangsta, came naturally. This was a kid raised in Treetop Piru territory, surrounded by the life from the start. By 2006, at just 16, YG joined the Pirus. His father had done time for tax fraud, and his mother raised him in a neighborhood where you had to know who you were riding with. The 400 block wasn't just home, it was his crew, his protection, and his brand. Years later, that same block would be shouted out in his music, printed on his merch, and worn across his chest. YG's rap rap grind started early. In 2008, he dropped his first mixtape, Four Fingers. A year later came the real Four Fingers, with a local track called Toot It and Boot It. That song broke out, climbing the Billboard Hot 100 and going platinum. It caught the ear of Def Jam, and by October 2009, YG had a deal. This was the moment he started moving from the block to the big stage. But the block never left him. Along with other Compton artists like DJ Quik, Slim 400, Corrupt, and High C, YG used his platform to rep his neighborhood. For him, the West Side Treetop Piru wasn't just a name, it was part of his identity. But he also tried to use that influence to speak on issues in the community. Even as his own life kept crossing paths with the streets, his business moves showed that connection. He came up with the idea for a label, Pushers Inc., teaming with DJ Mustard and Ty Dolla $ign. At first, it was more of a crew brand, a way to promote their music together. But when a meeting with Capitol Records fell through, the plan for the label got scrapped and they went their own ways. Later, in 2016, he confirmed what fans had been guessing. He was launching 400 as a real label under a deal with Interscope and Empire Distribution. The name, of course, was pulled straight from his roots, the 400 block of West Spruce Street. YG's personal life was just as public. He's a father to 2 daughters, Harmony and Vibe, born in 2015 and 2019. His relationships made headlines, dating singer Kehlani in 2019, then rapper Saweetie by 2023. But through it all, the streets stayed close. He's a known West Side Treetop Piru member, and his ties to that world showed up both in his music and in real-life incidents. In January 2012, during the filming of his I'm a Thug video, shots were fired. Police shut the set down. In June 2015, he was shot 3 times in the hip at a Studio City recording studio. The cops said he wasn't cooperative, but his team said he was fine, and back in the studio the next day. He wore those hits like a badge, another reminder that fame didn't pull him out of danger. YG's love for Los Angeles also bled into his image. He's a big Los Angeles Rams fan, often spotted at games or in their gear. In one memorable moment during the 2017 season, Rams wide receiver Robert Woods scored a touchdown and celebrated right next to YG in the end zone. Not all the headlines were about music or sports. In 2019, an SUV registered to him was tied to a shooting and police chase from Compton to Inglewood. Then in January 2020, just days before he was set to perform a Nipsey Hussle tribute at the Grammys, he was arrested on robbery charges. Bail was set at $250,000, but no charges were filed. A robbery case from 2018 was later dropped in 2022 after he settled with the man who claimed YG had stolen his chain in a Las Vegas casino. There were other run-ins too. In October 2024, he was arrested for driving under the influence. But even with the legal trouble, the injuries, and the street politics, YG kept moving, dropping music, building his 400 brand, and keeping his ties to the 400 block front and center. One of his most revealing moments came on March 28, 2025, when he released 2004 with Buddy and the Gang. In it, YG opened up about being sexually abused by an older woman when he was a minor. It was raw and personal, showing another side of someone the public often only saw through the lens of gang ties and hit records. YG's story is more than just a music career. It's a life tied to the Treetop Piru identity, balancing fame with the reality of where he came from. From the Compton streets to worldwide tours, the 400 block stayed stamped on his name, his business, and his music. And in Bompton, that stamp means everything. Vincent Coren, another member of the Treetop Pirus, better known in the streets and in the booth as Slim 400, came into this world far from the blocks he would later claim. He was born on June 21st, 1988, in Frankfurt, Germany. His pops was stationed there with the U.S. Army, so the military life was all he knew at first. But that didn't last long. Once his dad got moved back stateside, the family landed right in the heart of Compton, California. Compton wasn't just any city, it was a place where the culture, the music, and the streets all collided, and Slim grew up seeing it all firsthand. He went to Compton High School, the same halls that once had names like Eazy-E and The Game walking through. But it wasn't just known for the music legends. Those halls were also a meeting ground for the Crips and the Bloods. By the time Slim was coming up, the gang presence was heavy, and it wasn't just background noise. It was part of everyday life. Slim didn't just watch from the sidelines. While at Compton High, he banged with the Bloods, claiming his set and repping it with pride. But with that life came danger. At 19, Slim learned just how quick things could go left. He was rolling through a Crip neighborhood when shots rang out. He and his passenger got hit. Slim survived, but his homie didn't make it. That kind of loss doesn't fade away. It stays with you, changes how you move, and reminds you that every corner could be your last. By 2008, Slim was already locked in with music, a passion he'd had since he was just 12 years old. That year, he linked up with 2 names that would help push him further, YG and DJ Mustard. Both were Bloods too, and they were trying to break into the industry while staying true to the streets that made them. Together, they started building. With their support, Slim dropped his first mixtape, High Off Trees, the next year. Slim wasn't just some background figure in YG's circle. He was part of the same grind, dropping his own tapes and putting his name out there. He signed with Push's Inc., the label YG, and DJ Mustard were pushing at the time. In 2010, he gave the streets High Off Trees Volume 1 and 2, and his track Call It a Go with Buddha Badass and YG got him even more attention. He wasn't shy about his roots either. The music reflected his life, his set, and the blocks he called home. In 2014, Slim leveled up with his first studio album, Keeping It 400. It was more than just a title, it was a statement. 400 was the block, the movement, and the brand. The same way YG had 400, Slim kept that number close. When YG dropped his second album, Still Brazy, Slim popped up on 2 tracks, making sure his voice stayed in the mix. The grind didn't stop. In 2015, Slim released his EP Faux Block, and the next year, he gave the streets all Blastic for free. He brought in his people, YG, Sad Boy Loco, and Redrum 187, showing that he moved with his circle and kept it all in the family. But even with music keeping him busy, the streets never stopped calling. In 2019, Slim went back to Compton to visit family. That's when the past came knocking. A drive-by lit up the block and Slim got hit 9 times, 9 shots. For most people, that would have been the end. But Slim pulled through, spending 2 weeks in the hospital before making it out alive. Surviving something like that makes you think you're untouchable, but in Bompton, nobody is. 2 years later, on December 8th, 2021, Slim was outside his place in Inglewood when the gunfire came again. This time, he didn't make it. He was getting out of his car when Michael Linnell Terry pulled up. The shots ended Slim's life right there on the block. Hours before, Slim had been promoting his new music video, Caviar Gold, on Instagram, proof that even at the end, he was still pushing his craft. The aftermath shook his people. Police moved in, and by June 2022, 2 people were in cuffs. Michael Linnell Terry, 33, from Los Angeles, and Tamara Lynn Bell, 42, from Inglewood. Terry caught a murder charge with his bail set at over $3 million. Bell's was set at $1 million. Eventually, Terry pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, admitted to using a firearm, and because of a prior felony strike, the judge handed him 32 years behind bars. Slim 400's death wasn't just another headline. In the California hip-hop scene, he was seen as one of the ones who could have gone even further. He had songs like Gople with YG and Piru with YG, and Redrum 187, tracks that carried both the sound of the West Coast and the stamp of the streets. His loss hit his fans, his set, and his city hard. He left behind one daughter, Paris, born in 2009. For all the gang ties, the music videos, and the near-death escapes, that was the part of Slim's life that mattered most. And in the end, his story became another chapter in Bompton's long history of talent, tragedy, and the streets that give and take without warning. For the Treetop Pirus, being versus everybody isn't just something to say for clout. It's the life they've been living for decades. Since the 70s, they've been surrounded by heat from every side. And through it all, Treetop never folded. They've always been tight-knit, built on loyalty and reputation. That unity makes them strong, but it also means they respond to disrespect fast. In the streets, letting something slide can be taken as weakness. For TTP, that's not an option. They protect their image like they protect their turf. And even with all that heat, the TTP still finds ways to keep their own identity alive. Through colors, through codes, through the old oaths that every member knows by heart. They've been around since the 70s, and every generation that comes up under that banner adds their own chapter to the story. But as the years went on, the streets started to change, and the meaning of being trapped in Bompton took on a whole new level for the Treetops. The Versus Everybody label also comes from how far their reach has spread. We've seen them active outside California, setting up in states like Maryland, running the same type of structure they have in Compton. That kind of move brings new enemies, local crews who don't want outside sets running business in their area, and with each move, the target on their back grows. In Bompton, loyalty is currency, and one wrong step can bankrupt you in a second. Treetop's name carries weight, and weight comes with pressure. Their history gives them respect, but it also keeps them in the line of fire. The question is, in a city where enemies never seem to run out, can a set like Treetop ever truly leave the war behind? Or is Versus Everybody the only way they know how to survive? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.